Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be discussing a seemingly esoteric concept, but it isn't esoteric. The reason it's not is because we're fundamentally establishing ourselves as separate from other people, simultaneously looking inwards to discover what it is that we want, what we can contribute, and then how to bridge that gap between where we are through what we've discovered and how we could basically bring that to other people. But you can't bring that to anybody else until you, in a sense, learn how to establish your boundaries and separate yourself from the world, at least temporarily, for you to actually discover what that thing is or what those gifts are or what your purpose is. Because here's the thing is that you don't want to be scattered, right? You want to know specifically what you need to do. Because fundamentally, most people are lost. I was lost for a very long period of time, for decades. So it's not very uncommon in an information age where we're constantly being bombarded by new information, by new data, by stimuli left, right, and center from video games, from media, from social media, from television shows, from movies. And it's just way too much. It's way, way too much. So fundamentally, the first thing that we have to do is really determine, okay, so other people are telling me A, B, C, D, right? They're telling you whatever they're telling you. I need to find out specifically what it is that resonates with me at my core and what do I feel excited about doing. When I think about this thing in my head about me potentially doing something, it could be anything, right? Do I get excited? Do I get enthusiastic? Do I get motivated? Does my vision on its own basically kind of like expand and morph and transform without me making much of an effort, right? For you to like do your law of attraction, to do your vision board and to construct the vision with the Ferrari in the driveway. You know what I mean? No, no. Does your vision naturally kind of take shape and morph on its own? And then are you able to naturally bring yourself into that space? So do you naturally kind of move into that and feel into that vision, not because you're trying, but because it's true and authentic and genuine? Because here's the thing is that I've mentioned this in previous videos. You're a unique individual. You have unique gifts. And I don't just mean this spiritually or metaphysically. I mean genetically, biologically, you have unique DNA. So you may not believe in the spiritual stuff or in the religious stuff or whatever, but you cannot deny the fact that you have unique DNA. So why wouldn't everything else about you be unique? Right? Why wouldn't your mind be unique? Why wouldn't your heart be unique? Why wouldn't that connection between your body and how you interact with the world be unique? It is, right? But that's why a lot of people feel lost, is because they're being told by other people what to do. And then they start to do it and they do it half-heartedly because it's not really what they want to be pursuing long term. And they're confused as to why. And so they consume more stuff. And they're like, let me do this, let me do that. So what is required in this particular case is to separate yourself from uh, other people's directions, right? Which means whatever direction somebody else is taking, you want to be able to separate yourself from that, unless you've already determined that it is your purpose, that it is your mission, that it is something that you want to pursue, that you are good at it, that you've been doing it for some time, or you're excited about it, it's a new venture and you're kind of on your way, then by all means continue doing it. But fundamentally you have to ask yourself, okay, so what decisions am I afraid to make? Because if you ask yourself what decisions you're afraid to make, where does the fear lie? Where does the trepidation lie? If you were to take a risk and you knew by taking that risk that you were going to be supported by God or by the universe, would you take that risk? And the answer is yes. If you believed that there was a force or forces or energy or the universe or God that was there to support you as you took the next step, as you took a risk, as you jumped into the unknown, not knowing where you're going to land, but having faith that you will land as long as as you work and you do the next thing, what would you do? Right? That's what you have to ask yourself. What would you do? And then you have to go and do that thing. Here's the issue that most people face is that they're concerned that they might make the wrong decision and they're going to end up in a worse place, or it's going to be more painful than it was before they made that decision. And that may be true. I've told you my story and it is true. What happened was when I left my 9 to 5 job. It was a stable job. I was never going to get fired. I had prospects in the job. It was it was fulfilling in many ways. Like it fulfilled like a lot of the different criteria that a lot of people would say, traditionally speaking, that a job would fulfill, right? You have security, you have stability, you have an income that can support you, and all the typical 9 to 5 stuff. So what happened was, when I quit my 9 to 5, because I didn't have a backup, but I just knew it was the next move to make, I knew I had to do it. I ended up sleeping, living in the cheapest motel room in Niagara Falls. I told a story before where I had no money for food. I'd buy a sack of $4 sack of potatoes that would last for me for the next 2 weeks. And living there with the cockroaches, I would get the continental breakfast. I'd split it in half, to have the first half in the morning, to have the second half in the evening. And then once I ran out of money, I lived in my car. I basically lived out of my car. I was effectively homeless, right? So I was sleeping in my car, washing myself in my car. I took whatever money I had left. So it was like $8 per day that I had to spend on food. And I would just go to Bulk Barn, buy a bag of mixed nuts, and that would be my food. Right. So then I started driving Uber after that, because I had no other options. And if you don't know, Uber requires fewer qualifications than it does to work at McDonald's, because all you have to do is provide documentation. They don't even interview you. So, I was in a bad spot. And then I found, the sales training program. I performed very well. And then I went to 6 figures in 0 to 6 months, and then doubled my salary from 6 months to about 8 months after that. So I went from 0 to 6 figures in 6 months, and then doubled my income again after 8 months. So you can't stay where you are, man. You can't do that. It's not a smart decision if you do that. You can't stay comfortable, because you're not growing if you stay comfortable. You're not growing if you don't do things. You're not growing if you don't make an effort to construct the life that you want to construct. This doesn't mean, like, it does mean having new experiences, right? Meeting new people, going to a class, trying different stuff like that. It absolutely does mean that. But what I don't mean is, oh, just go out to the club and go and party, right? And like, if you want to do that once in a while, and that's fine. People do that. But what I'm trying to tell you is, if you're not happy with the state of your life, nobody is going to change that for you. Nobody's coming to save you. It doesn't matter how much people love you. It doesn't matter how much people care about you. They can't make the decisions for you. The closest people in my life, right? My mom, my sister, is they can be there for me every step of the way. They can infuse me with love. They can infuse me with energy. They can infuse me with passion and motivation, and help me problem solve. But if I don't do anything, maybe it's not your family, maybe it's your friends, maybe you have nobody. But the point is that, if you don't, it doesn't really matter, because if you don't do anything, nothing is going to happen. And at the end of the day, I think I mentioned it before, when I made that decision to buy the program, and I basically, when I say buy it, I mean, I didn't have money, but I had to go into debt. So now I owe 12 grand of money that I can't pay back. And I'm just having faith that I'm going to be able to work hard enough and make this program work for me, so I can make it back, so I can make that money back. So this is what I mean. I didn't consult anybody when I made that decision. And people told me, even after I made it, I don't know if I would have made that decision. It sounds like a scam, right? You wonder why. You wonder why you shouldn't always be talking to people about decisions that you want to make for your life. Because people, even the closest people to you, sometimes they're not going to be quote unquote on your side. And the reason they're not is because they want to see you kind of like safe. They want to make sure that you're not doing anything stupid. And a lot of people, sometimes they do want to exercise that level of influence or control over somebody, because they just have uncertainty. But at a certain point, my mom was actually, by the way, very good at this, is that she kind of like, she knew that I was going into chaos. Like, when I was going out there and driving around, sleeping in my car, you know what I mean? Like, waking up, hitting the Uber button to driving, and then sleeping in my car, and then doing that all over again. She had a sense of what was happening, and she knew that I didn't want to talk about it, but she kind of let me go. She's like, this boy needs to suffer. Like, he needs to experience some kind of a pain. Right. And people who love you are going to do that for you. But sometimes you're not going to have that. So the best thing that you need to do is make the decisions. Because here's the thing, here's the point, is that when I left that job, my 9 to 5 job. Life got way worse, like like exponentially worse for a period of time. And then, it was like dark night of the soul. But then at the bottom, right, when you're crawling up, you go to another side. It's almost like there was a wall there, and you can't get to that other world unless you go through that cave, unless you go under that cave. It's almost like sometimes you need that darkness. So I'm not telling you to intentionally go into that. I'm not telling you to intentionally have difficult experiences, but in a sense, I am. And I'm telling you that you need to have faith in yourself, because if you don't put yourself in a position where you're taking risks, where you're being bold, where you're being courageous, then you will never find the strength that you're looking for. The strength that you're looking for is not going to just come magically and randomly in your current situation where you're nice and comfortable. You have to do something that's going to shock the system, that's going to shock your world, that's going to get you out of that state of mind where you're just kind of like humming along, and you're in this kind of like fog where things are kind of very clear, right? You're like, oh, that's over here, this is over there. You don't want to move too much because you're in the fog, but you know where things are and you could kind of stay there. No, sometimes you got to just run straight through it. And maybe you don't know exactly where you're going to go, but going anywhere is better than where you are. And the reason why is because where you are is not going to provide that evolution that you're looking for, right? So if you want to grow, if you want to become a different version of yourself, if you want to find out what you're really made of, and you want to become the person that you always knew that you were from years ago, since you were a kid, you always had these visions. If you want to be able to become that person and construct that life, you need to be able to take risks, and you have to be ready for the dark night of the soul, for the pain, for the darkness. Okay. Because that's where you're going to learn all of the information that you need to learn. And you're going to learn it the hard way. There's no easy way. I'm telling you right now, there is basically no easy way to learn, at least not in my experience. Maybe somebody tells you something and you implement it immediately. Because here's the thing is that if you could learn the easy way, then none of us would ever suffer. None of us would ever suffer, because why? Well, we're taught, like we're told by parents, by teachers, by the school system, by other things that we see on YouTube. Oh, do this and do that, and this is how you should function. But we don't listen, right? Because the thing is that if we just listened and we just did what everybody told us to do, then of course there's all this motivational stuff on YouTube. Your parents probably gave you great advice. If we just listened and just learned, then we would never have to have any suffering. We would never have any pain. That would never happen, right? That negative experience would never occur, but it does. And the reason it does occur is because as human beings, it's very often the case, most frequently the case, that we need to experience hardships so we can embed and integrate that experience and use it as a learning platform, because that experience actually changes you genetically. Epigenetically, it turns on different parts of you that were not engaged before. So you cannot learn at a biological level, at a physical level, unless you go through difficulties. Look at all these athletes. They wouldn't even be half of what they are unless they had those really hard games, those really hard training sessions, unless they were grinding. They would not be able to perform at that level unless they were doing that, right? So you have to ask yourself, am I putting myself in situations that are challenging me, that I'm going to have to perform no matter what, right? That no matter what, I'm going to have to make it through, because if I don't, I may not make it at all, right? Which means that you have to put skin in the game. You have to put skin in the game. Because here's the thing, is that all that information about that training program, that was on the internet. I didn't need that. I could have Googled. I could have been on YouTube for hours and just collected all the information for days and hours and weeks, right? Collect all the information. I could have gone to, 1,000 interview sites and, prepared my interview and did interview after interview after. I could have done all of that. But the thing is that we don't do that because there's too much information and there's no accountability. There's no people there to actually support you. So you need to put skin in the game. You need accountability. You need people to support you, and you need to. I sacrificed, right? And you need to be able to sacrifice so you can put your whole heart, your whole body, your whole mind and soul into that venture. So you can keep yourself. So you can tell yourself, I need to make this work. Right? You need to do that. because gone are the days where you can watch 1,000 YouTube videos and you just collect all the information, you download it in your brain, and then you do all the stuff, and then your life is perfect. I'm not going to say gone are the days because those days were never here. That was never the case. That was never, ever the case. So, yeah, hope that was helpful. That was a bit of a rant, but I think it was a really helpful one. But that being the case, I'm working with a mastermind right now. Like I'm part of many different programs. Like I said, I put skin in the game. I put my money on the line. I put my time on the line. I put a lot of things on the line so I can make things work. So I can make things work. And again, it's not. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this for my benefit. The reason I'm doing this is because I have all of this to give, but I need to be able to like I have to give it away because that's the whole purpose of existence, right? The whole purpose of life, of your life, is to discover what unique gifts that you have, to cultivate those gifts, to nurture those gifts, to expand them, and then to give them to the world. That's the purpose of your existence. Right? I'm going to tell you that flatly. I don't know if anybody's ever been that direct about it, but that's the purpose of your existence. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I'm going through everything that I'm going through, right? Because I want to bring all of myself. I want to feel at the end of life that have been completely emptied out. Some people, they do that in the physical way, right? Like David Goggins, most people know him. He does it purely in the physical realm, in the physical dimension. But that is also correlated with his mind, right? Because again, you can't push yourself to that limit unless you have a strong mind, unless you're using your mind properly. So it's really about, in that particular instance, mind over matter, but it's the same thing in life in general. It's the way that you're using what's been given to you that will either create the life that you want to create or that will lead you to self-destruction. So keep that in mind, right? I'm doing this for a reason, and I'm doing this to hopefully impact as many people as possible. And if you're watching this, hopefully you're one of them, and we can go on the journey together. So that being the case, I am launching a Skool community, which is going to be free. I'm rolling some things out, and it's going to be a lot more organized, a lot more cohesive. I'm going to have group coaching calls. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out if there's any interest to do a group Zoom, right? So basically what I mean is we're going to have a Zoom call, and I'm going to schedule it, and you don't have to opt into like any community or anything like that. I'm going to do it on YouTube. And then what we can do is I'm going to schedule a day. So probably in the next day or two, I'm going to announce specifically when it's going to happen, and we'll see how many people show up. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, maybe it's none, maybe it's nobody shows up, right? I don't know what's going to happen, but it's the reason that's going to help is because it'll help me kind of understand specifically, if you're watching this, what I can help you with, what you need from me, because I have a wealth of experience that I can impart to you, that I could share with you, and that I could also keep you accountable to. Because I'm telling you right now, like when we do this whole community thing, this is not going to be like, oh, I'm just here and I disappear. No. You're like, there's going to be accountability. And the reason that's going to be important is because skin in the game, right? Skin in the game. You're taking a risk. You're betting something. You're giving something up. Sacrifice was talked about in the Bible, right? When you're serious about a covenant that you're making, about a promise that you're making to yourself, you're giving up something of value. You're sacrificing something, so you could show yourself. You're demonstrating to yourself, and if you like, to God or to the universe, that you are serious, right? And you are going to follow through, and that in and of itself builds character, because that in and of itself will get you to develop the habits and to develop the process that actually helps you get to that outcome. So I want to help you achieve that. So if you like the video, make sure you like it, subscribe to this channel. And if you have a comment in the meantime, leave it in the comments, ask me a question. If you're down with the Zoom thing, give the video a like or leave a comment. And that's it. I'll keep you posted with any news. And of course, as usual, I will see you tomorrow.